Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Hope everyone had a great holiday weekend. Lauren Javar here with Jared Smith. Jared, what shirt are you wearing today? What is that?
The Las Vegas Desert Dogs. This is my
I love
new
it.
mascot, Jackpot. The Nerfy dog is a desert dog now. Very
Desert Dog.
currently he is. Oh, he's a desert dog. So he is currently slumbering on my couch. He has this new thing now. He has discovered. So it's been 3-4 weeks in this new Vegas apartment. He has
Yeah.
mastered the indoors, and now he is begging me at least once a day. He'll go over to the glass door, and I'm like, dude, it's 110 degrees outside. Little bro likes to go out there and sunbathe. It's the most bizarre
Mhm.
thing ever. I don't know if any other Vegas people with dogs can attest to that, but I'm literally in here with my air conditioned, trying to stay cool. And little bro's out there sunbathing in 110-degree heat. But hey, more power to him, right? He's a desert dog.
More power to him. I absolutely love it. Desert Dog, baby. Desert Dog t-shirt, Desert Dog slumbering. We had a lot of dogs win this
Oh,
weekend. College football. Did you like that transition, Jared? We're going to go over our college
she's on
football week
fire
one
today.
reactions. Thank you. Thank you. 2 days off, feeling good. It's crazy. I'm actually moving out of my apartment in 1 week and moving into a new apartment. So I'm like trying to take advantage of my last
Moving on
seven
up.
days in this building. Moving
You're
up,
like the
moving out.
Jeffersons, like KJ
I know.
Jefferson, maybe. Ooh.
Oh, look at us. We
Ooh.
are on fire on a Tuesday morning. Tackle Tuesday, baby. We have a lot to talk about today. Obviously, getting into our Better Up segment, doing a little MLB chat, college football, week one reactions, because I feel some type of way about some of these games, some of these new coaches. We're going to have Iain MacMillan on talking NFL week one, which is coming up this Thursday. I'm so excited. And then, obviously, last week we did our playoff or laid off segment for the NFC. Today we got to do the AFC because we're looking at three coaches. We're staring them down. We'll break them all down for you. So let's get right into it. Let's bet it. Week one reactions, Jared. First of all, I have like 5 reactions that I typed down here.
Oh
Number
wow.
one, Georgia is really good. I was at that game. They lost 15 players to the NFL draft, and they didn't miss a single step
Mm-mm.
against Oregon. I still cannot believe my over didn't hit. I was 3 for 4 on Saturday. Should have been 4 for 4 because
Oh.
Georgia did their job. Oregon absolutely shit the bed. It's crazy. They became the second team in college football history to score a touchdown on their first 7 drives as an AP top 25
Wow.
team. Stetson Bennett had a career best 368 yards. 15 defenders had tackles. They didn't miss a beat despite losing 15 players.
Mm-mm. No, they were fantastic. I think there's a couple of ways to look at that. Oregon was being hyped as a team that could compete at that next level. No, wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Unfollow that trend. Oregon
Yeah.
is what Oregon always has been, which is a team that gets pushed around by bigger, tougher teams. We saw it last year with Utah
Mm-hmm.
twice in the Pac 12 regular season and in the conference championship game. And we saw it
Yeah.
in the times a million, times the SEC exponent factor of SEC on Saturday. Georgia is still very good. Stetson Bennett is maybe a little bit more polished. Todd Monken maybe a little bit more confident calling aggressive plays for his quarterback, who was fantastic
Mm-hmm.
in the national championship game last year. And certainly after you beat Alabama in the Natty, there is no bigger matchup than that. Every game he plays this year, he will be like, I beat Bama in the Natty. I can handle this. So
Yeah.
that's where I feel about Georgia. They are absolutely in the playoff conversation, and they look maybe better than last year. Probably impossible, but they
Yeah.
look pretty damn good.
You mentioned Oregon in the Pac-12. The Pac-12 is absolutely cooked at this point. They're done.
Mm.
They're roasted. They're toasted. They're done. So you look at the Bruins. They were 13 heading into the season. They had a big Rose Bowl win over LSU, which at the time was LSU. But I feel like the national rankings this offseason kind of brought a ton of credibility to the Pac-12 this fall. We see Cam Rising throw a massive interception. They lose to Florida. And they were picked as one of the top of the Pac-12 in the preseason polls, one of the favorites from the Pac-12 to make the college football playoff from the conference. Losing to the Gators puts them behind the 8 ball. And I know one loss doesn't necessarily make or break a season, but it definitely doesn't give them the benefit of the doubt. And the Ducks get embarrassed in Atlanta against Georgia. Pac-12 is 1-8 against SEC teams in the last 9 week one games. USC is the only team right now in the Pac-12 that is unblemished. I just feel like the Pac-12 is cooked. There's no way they're making the college football playoff at this point. That's just how I feel about them in general as a conference. I feel like Florida, by the way, and Billy Napier, solid combo. Great way to start his coaching tenure. They beat Utah, ranked 7th. Anthony Richardson was dominating under center. He ran the ball exceptionally well. That was a fun game to watch, don't you think?
That was probably the second or third most exciting game of the weekend. I think App State UNC wins the crown for most exciting game of the weekend. So Pac-12, I agree, not a great start, obviously. I'm not totally ready to write off the entire conference for making the playoff, just because
I'm ready. I'm black
Clemson,
and white. There's no gray area.
You're in permanent ink. Lauren's got the permanent marker out, and she was ready to cross the Pac-12 off the list. All right, well, let me try to sell y'all.
Yeah.
Let me try to sell you. Let me try to recalibrate what the Pac-12 could be. I think USC looked good. I think that is a team, especially because of the firepower and the star power at the top, will get attention down the stretch. They will be in the national spotlight. Utah, in my opinion, played a great game. They just struck out twice in the red zone on fluky plays. I still think Cameron Rising scored on, I believe it was either second or third down on a QB sneak, and they didn't even review it. And then they ended up not getting the fourth down play. Then late, obviously, the interception, bad play calling, bad scheme, terrible throw. Utah had multiple chances to win that game. And I think because of how good Billy Napier and Anthony Richardson could be, that team clearly ahead of schedule, I think that loss might not look that bad in 8 weeks. So if Utah can run the table, beat USC, beat Oregon, and go 11-1, and their only loss is a week 1 road loss to Florida with Anthony Richardson, who's at the Heisman podium in December, maybe we can make a case that either USC or Utah, the winner of that game, has their claim to the Pac-12 championship and obviously to a berth in the college football playoff. There's my case. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I can see a path to
But
that.
it is something to think about. Yeah, it is something to think about, and I actually think that's super interesting. You sold me a little. I'm still crossing out the Pac-12. I don't like them at all. But speaking of, you talked about Billy Napier. New head coaches in their debuts were pretty successful. Besides Brian Kelly at LSU, but that's neither here nor there. You look at Mario Cristobal with Miami Hurricanes. They took care of business. Tyler Van Dyke looked good again for his second season under center. Oklahoma, Brent Venables, Sooners beat UTEP 45-13. They led 21-0 in the first 8 minutes of the game. Florida and Billy Napier, USC and Lincoln Riley, they were tied 7-7 at half against Rice, but they pulled away. Caleb Williams looked really good in that game. And I know Marcus Freeman didn't get the win for Notre Dame, but they were up 10-7 at half. The difference in that one was obviously C.J. Stroud, who is the top of the Heisman board right now. And the difference in that game to me was the fact that Ohio State trusted their quarterback and Notre Dame didn't. But you saw what Marcus Freeman was able to do, especially on the defensive side. It was just the last quarter of that game that the defense couldn't necessarily hold up and the offense couldn't support what the defense did for the first 3 quarters of that game. But I still think it was a really good first game of the season for a guy like Marcus Freeman, maybe putting Notre Dame, giving him a little bit more respect. Heading into the rest of the season, I don't know. What are your thoughts on Notre Dame against Ohio State and Marcus Freeman's debut as a head coach?
Little rocky for Ohio State for sure. I'm interested to see Jackson Smith and Jigba's injury status, because you saw
I think they said 2 games. 1 game, 2 games he's going to be out with a hamstring injury.
College injuries, as you know, you've been on the sidelines for them and you've discussed them at length here. They can be a little bit tricky with the actual information. So I don't know. I'm not gonna write off any Ohio State claims until I get a full picture on there. And now I believe they have a couple of cupcakes coming up, but Notre Dame to me was impressive. And listen, you want to say Marcus Freeman's 0-2 in his career as a head coach? Yeah, those are 2 top 10 games on the road that he coached.
Yeah, seriously.
So I give him a little bit of leeway here. And now they go home to face Marshall this week. Brad Powers, very notable college football professional, Bettor. He was on Notre Dame on a release show earlier this week. That line's now moved to 20. Probably gets to 21. I think you should feel safe buying Notre Dame this week at 20, thinking that it's going to close at that key number of 21, and you'll get maybe a point of closing line value there, maybe even a point and a half if it moves past it. Marshall hasn't faced a Power 5 team in 4 years, and they're without their best player still, running back Ali, who took a leave of absence a couple weeks ago. So Notre Dame's Marcus Freeman's going to get his first Notre Dame win this Saturday. The question is by how much. And I think Notre Dame is a team that I would absolutely keep on my radar, because I think there is an opening for a fourth team. You have Ohio State, you have Alabama, you have Georgia. Who's the fourth team? Clemson sure didn't look the part last night. Who is going to be that fourth team? I don't know. It's still too early to really tell, but I think in my eyes, it's clear who the top 3 teams are, and then everything else kind of filters down there.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things kind of trickle moving forward. Speaking of moving forward, let's move forward to week 2, because we have some really big games going on. Alabama taking on Texas, Kentucky at Florida, and Baylor at BYU. I know we're going to be breaking these games down throughout the week, the spread, the total, how we feel about, who's going to finish stronger on one side or the other. But when you look, let's just break down Alabama at Texas really quick, because Bama, they had no cracks. They took care of business. They looked like the Bama team that we're used to seeing. And they're going up against now a Texas team with Quinn Ewers going to be the saving grace apparently for that team. What are your expectations heading into week 2? And then we'll move on to Major League Baseball after that.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you talk about Alabama, it's obviously a big line move right out of the open. It started 17. I'm seeing 20, contrary to Joey Galloway's analysis. It's not getting to 30. Probably 21 is, I would assume, based off of where the key number is, where some of the Texas money will step in. It probably gets to 21 if I had to guess. Alabama first half continues to be the trend. They covered against Utah State. I mean, they covered the full game too, but they covered against Utah State pretty easily in the first half. Yeah. The first half line this week, obviously much more shorter. That doesn't make sense.
Much more shorter-ish.
Much more shorter-ish, shortest. With a higher total in the 60s, you would guess laying 10 in the first half. You feel pretty good about Bama covering that based off of how they looked in game 1. But listen, that game, I think it's on the – is it a neutral site? I don't know where they're playing that game. I don't know if it's in Austin or if it's in a neutral site, but you would imagine it'll be a pretty heavy Texas crowd if it's played anywhere in the state of Texas. So that could be an interesting, how does the Alabama offensive line, which I think was the one weakness that I could point out from their win on Saturday, that offensive line isn't fully back to status that we might expect, even though there were some adjustments made in the coaching room and, emphasis placed on Alabama's offensive line by Nick Saban in the offseason. I still think they showed some vulnerability. And I think that's going to be where Texas, if their defensive line can create some pressure, might have a chance to muck this game up a little bit. But let's be honest, Alabama should win this game by 3 touchdowns more often than not. And I think it's going to be hard to find Texas money in the market this week.
We're going to be breaking down those games all week long. We also have NFL Week 1 coming up, which we're going to bring on Iain MacMillan in a second. But before we do, let's shift to the ballpark, baby, because we are officially in the final month of the regular season in Major League Baseball. We talk about the Yerfies. We talk about the Nerfies. Yesterday, the Nerfies went 500, 6-6. They're hitting at a 53.8% so far in September, going for a 3rd consecutive month at 54% or higher. And Mark Lammy, Jared, has a couple picks from the site. I know you have 2 Yerfies. I have a Nerfie today for my play of the day, which I'll save for a little bit. Oh, no, you don't have 2 Yerfies. Mark Lammy has 2 Yerfies. You have 2 Nerfies.
He does.
What are Mark Lammy's plays, and why should people go to Pickswise.com?
Yeah, so full disclosure, I have reached the saturation point with baseball. It has happened. I used to get really excited, nerd Jared, to track the Yerfies and Nerfies every night. It was such an exciting part of my night. I thought I was doing a public service and now it has become a massive chore. It has become a massive chore. And that tells me internally it is time to pivot away from baseball. I understand that there's still a lot of Nerfy clamoring that goes on, not only on this show, but also on social media. So I will continue to do a public service and do that sheet whenever we have a show, which is today, obviously. But I am not going to be invested in the baseball world. I am not going to be invested very much in the baseball world going forward. It is going to be cursory, nerfy bets, and that's it. Until we get to the playoffs, then I'll maybe change my tune a bit. That being said, Baltimore, Toronto, Yerfy, that's the afternoon game. Cincinnati, Chicago, Cubs, Yerfy. So Mark Lammy's got 2 Yerfy picks today, walking the tightrope, considering how hot the Nerfies have been. And then I will give you my non-play of the day Nerfy. I have two Nerfies today that I like. The first one is a non-play of the day, so we're going to go just a little bit less on it. White Sox, Mariners, Nerfy. Johnny Cueto, 15-4. I mean, Johnny Cueto, what fountain of youth, bro. Give me a sip of that. 15-4 to the Nerfy this year. He's 9-0 on the road. Impressive stuff from Cueto this year. His data has been fantastic. He's going up against Logan Gilbert. 22-5 to the Nerfy this year. 21-3 at home since 2019. He has been absolutely fantastic to his Nerfy record, especially in the friendly confines of Seattle. White Sox are a below-average team scoring this year. Their rate's 24%. It jumps to 26% on the road, but they've only scored 1 time in the last 8 games overall. How about Seattle? They failed to score yesterday, but prior to that, they had 5 consecutive games with a run. Despite that, they're only scoring 32% on the year. So their rate's been hovering around the major league average, maybe slightly above because of the recent streak. But I still think they are an average lineup. So we have average to below average lineups. We have average to above average pitchers. And we're only laying 25 cents over at the South Point. Feels like a fair bet. I probably price this thing closer to minus 140. So we are nibbling. Hopefully not sleepless in Seattle later. White Sox, Mariners, Nerfy.
I love it. I have a Nerfy coming up. I'm going to save it for my best bet of the day. But speaking of best bets, let's head to the football field with the men, baby. Bringing Iain MacMillan to talk about some of these week 1 games because week 1 is literally starting in 2 days. He's a senior editor for BetSided.com. Iain, how the heck are you? Week 1 is finally here. It feels like Christmas morning on a Taco Tuesday. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Like you said, it does feel like a Christmas morning. It is the start of the NFL season. My favorite sport to watch, my favorite sport to bet on. I can't wait. I'm counting down the hours.
Let's win some money, and hopefully you win us some money this week. I know you have a lot of bets on our sheet right now. Before we do, I know are you betting on the first game, the Bills game coming up this Thursday? Or are you kind of staying away from it and just enjoying game 1 of the season?
I am betting on it. Actually, I'm betting on all 274 games. Is it 272 games? Yeah, I bet on every single NFL game. Yeah.
So wait, hold on. I have a clarifying question there. Is it do you bet flat 1 unit on every game, or do you say, all right, half a unit here, 2 units there? Like, what's your style there, bud?
1 flat unit every game, no matter what. Spread, total, or money line, but only money line underdog. I don't cheap out with any money line favorites. So, but it is just 1 flat unit on every single game, no matter what.
I can't argue.
Speaking of the Rams, I love it.
Game. That's how you do it. I don't mind it.
Yeah. So speaking of the Rams, you said you take an underdog money line. I mean, they're the Super Bowl champions about 8 months ago, 7 months ago. Are you betting on the Rams in this game, or do you feel like the Bills and Josh Allen are going to reign dominance over them?
I am going to bet the Rams. I wasn't quite confident enough to take their money line, though. I'll take the 2.5 points because I think this could certainly come down to a game that is a last-second field goal. But yeah, somehow the Rams, defending Super Bowl champions, kind of underrated heading into this year, which is a little bit strange, especially considering they're returning most of their roster. Obviously, they lost Robert Woods and Von Miller, but then they added Bobby Wagner and Allen Robinson. So somehow the defending Super Bowl champs aren't getting much love this year. I will certainly be giving them that love. So not brave enough, though, to go money line on opening night. I'll take the 2.5 points.
So here's the funny thing about this. The defending Super Bowl champs are 19-3 straight up in week 1.
Crazy.
Year. Yet the Rams clearly no love in the market with this line opening as a slight favorite for LA. And now I don't think it's going to get to 3. If it does get to 3, it won't be there long probably. But that's a number to keep an eye on as we get closer to Thursday. All right, it looks like a 5-pack from what I'm staring at here. I mean, you throw another bet in there, you get yourself a nice little 6-pack, Ian. But let's go with the 5-pack, maybe the mix and match here. And listen, favorites, especially divisional favorites, have not been the soup du jour week 1 either. But you're kicking it off right now with the Bengals laying almost a touchdown against the Steelers. Tell me why.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, most of my bets are underdogs this week, but this is one that I really like. Number one, heading back to last year, I thought the Steelers were one of the worst playoff teams in NFL history. Statistically, they're a terrible team. Kudos to Mike Tomlin for dragging that team to the playoffs. You look at stats like net yards per play, they're in the bottom 5 in the NFL. I don't think they really got better in the offseason, whereas the Bengals did exactly that. This is the team that's the defending AFC champions. But their one weakness was their offensive line. They had the second highest QB sack percentage in the NFL, but then they went and got 3 starting offensive linemen, Alex Kappa, Ted Karras, Lael Collins from the Cowboys. All of a sudden, they're going to have one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. So I'm high on the Bengals this year. I'm high on them week 1 against a Steelers team that I think is going to struggle. Because like I said, I don't think they got much better in the offseason. I don't know if I trust Trubisky any more than I trusted Roethlisberger. So, this is one of the spots that I'm willing to lay some points.
You want to hear a crazy trend?
Yeah, I like it. Another spot.
Sorry, Lauren. Hey, I have a crazy trend for you. Here's another one. The Super Bowl loser is 0-12 against the spread in week 1 the following year in the last 12 years.
It's going to break it this year.
Yeah. You know what?
Take that for what you will. Lauren's got the Bengals colors on, so she's ready for Joe Burrow. But besides that.
Yeah. Jabara and Jaburo. I'm just saying.
Jabaro and Jaburo is a match made in heaven.
I bought this weird I bought like the Cartier sunglasses that he has, but mine were fake from Amazon, like $10, and his were $10,000. But you know what? One and the same. It's okay. We might break him out for Thursday. I might be wearing this shirt all week long for my Bengals. We'll see what happens. Another team that I love that you're fading this week is my Detroit Lions in Detroit, going up against an Eagles team that everyone is extremely high on this year. You got the Eagles laying 4. It's now moved at FanDuel to 3.5. How do you feel about the Eagles heading into this season? Because I know Jared is also high on them, thinking that they might be one of those teams going from worst to first heading into this year.
Yeah, they certainly could be. I mean, the Eagles, it's all going to come down to Jalen Hurts. As obvious as that is to say, it's going to come down to their quarterback. I mean, that's kind of obvious to say, but I mean, it truly is, because their defense is one of the best defenses in the NFL. They did struggle a little bit with their pass rush. They got Jordan Davis out of Georgia in the draft, which will hopefully shore that up a little bit. And their offense is good. They had one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL last year, so it's just going to come down to Jalen Hurts' arms. They've now given them the weapons to succeed. A.J. Brown, Zach Pascal is a little bit of an underrated acquisition they got in the offseason. So I like the Eagles quite a bit, and I don't like the Lions, unfortunately. They're getting a little bit of a Hard Knocks bump. People are watching Hard Knocks. They're falling in love with him. Dan Campbell's a very likable character.
Campbell.
He is, I would say, a leader of men. But is he a good football coach? I don't know if I'm sold on that yet. I know they had a good spread record last year, but a lot of those were like backdoor covers. Statistically, they were still a terrible team. They didn't do a ton really in the offseason to change my opinion about that. So, I'll take the Eagles. I'll lay the points with them.
Ian,
why don't you just take the knife and twist it, Ian? Why don't you just take the knife and twist it? Come on now. That's my Lions you're talking about here. Sorry, Jared.
I will say this. They probably have one of top 5 offensive lines in football this year. That might be the only nice thing I can say about the Lions. Usually offensive lines matter, but they need to be complemented by quarterbacks that are very proficient and very accurate. And I do like the running game a lot with Swift. I think they're going to be competitive, and they're going to be tough, and they're not going to give up any freebies. They are going to make you earn it. But their defense, Okudah in the secondary, they can be had. We'll see how the defensive line holds up against this Eagles offense. We've seen that total go up significantly from an opener of around 46 to now 49. We're starting to see some buyback on the 49, back down to 48.5. But the early sharp money there definitely favoring the over. The Eagles offense is going to be fantastic. The offensive line also very good. So I would bet the over there, but I wouldn't touch either side. But just because I don't want to get pushback from Lauren, and if I bet against the Lions, she might.
He's worried I'm going to jump through the camera.
Yeah, she's going to, yell at me and send me text messages or something like that. All right, let's move on to Brown. So I wanted nothing to do with this game, Ian, and I'm curious your take, because I think the two games that are the toughest to handicap this week are the quarterback revenge games. Obviously, Russ Monday night in Seattle, and then the situation here with Baker and Carolina going to Cleveland. What got you to the window on the Browns? I'm assuming it was either a fade of Baker or just the overall situation in Cleveland maybe a little bit better than Carolina.
Yeah, I think the whole Jacoby Brissett starting for the Browns, I think people have kind of overreacted to that. I think that he is still a very capable quarterback, especially when he has a running game and a defense, and that's what the Browns have. The defense were second. The Browns' defense was second in opponent yards per play last year. The only team that allowed fewer yards per play last season was the Bills. And then the running game tied the Colts for the most yards per carry. So you have one of the best running games, one of the best defenses. Jacoby Brissett's not going to lose you a game. He might not win you a game, but I don't think he's going to lose you a game. And also, I'm just fading. I'm not a motivation guy. When people say they're going to bet on the Panthers because it's a revenge game or because Baker Mayfield's motivated, I was motivated to run 10 miles this morning, and then 1 mile into it, I realized I was fat, no shape. So, motivation can only take you so far, unfortunately. There's no 110% effort that doesn't exist. He's going to give his 100% effort no matter who he's playing against.
Damn,
so I'm kind of fading that
get
narrative
those
as
miles
well.
in,
So I'm going to take the Browns. Yeah, it wasn't going to happen. I'm taking the Browns on the money line in the first game.
Oh my God. I only dream about running 10 miles. Good for you, my friend. Good for you.
You wake up at 6 a.m. and work out.
Lauren's
like a freaking fitness
queen.
I
agree
these
with you
days.
though. Oh my God. I know. But mine are just when I actually am taking a workout class and someone's yelling at me, telling me what to do. And also I feel like working out next to dudes, it pushes me to go harder rather than when I'm just in my gym by myself. I'm on my phone texting and walking on the treadmill at a 3.0. It's horrible.
Oh my God,
but I actually agree with you about Jacoby Brissett. This guy's a veteran. He's a sure backup in the league. I don't think he's really good enough to be a starter, but I trust a guy like that who has a lot of experience under his belt. He's been there before. So I feel pretty good about that heading into week 1. I like that bet, actually. I might tail you on that one. Let's talk about the Cardinals for a second, because they're without DeAndre Hopkins. There's obviously a lot of drama in the offseason surrounding Kyler Murray, deleting all of the Instagram photos and then signing a deal. They're going up against the Chiefs here. The spread right now is set at 3.5. You got it at plus 4.5. Good value here on the Cardinals. Why are you leaning towards them to cover the spread against a Kansas City team led by Patty Ice?
Yeah, my issue is with the Chiefs' defense. I think when people think about the Chiefs, they think about Patrick Mahomes and all the things he can do and how he is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. But let's not forget, this is a Chiefs' defense that last year ranked 28th in opponent yards per play, 30th in opponent yards per carry. They can't stop the run, 22nd in third down defense, 31st in sack percentage. And all they really did to get better in the offseason was sign a streaky Carlos Dunlap. So, the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, but I'm not going to be laying 4.5 points on the Chiefs when they take on another playoff team with that defense. Unfortunately, Patrick Mahomes can't play both sides of the ball. And the story with the Cardinals in the past few years has been that they get off to strong starts. It seems like every year Kyler Murray's been in the NFL through week 5 and week 6 is the MVP favorite, and then he kind of falls off a little bit. Now, is that because he doesn't watch film? I would say that might have something to do with it. He seems to rely on instinct, as he quoted himself saying. So Cardinals early in the season, I think, are generally a good bet, and I'm going to fade the Chiefs. I bet against them a lot last year too. I just don't trust their defense.
Lauren, how do you think our audience would feel if I came on the show and said, I'm betting this because of instinct? Do you think they would enjoy that?
I mean, I'm betting the Lions money line week 1 because of instinct.
But that's different. You're admitting.
But I'm not telling people to bet that. I just bet the Lions money line every single game last season.
Exactly.
I wanted to.
That's different. That's different. I'm talking about if I got on the show and I gave this amazing handicap about why I think a team is going to win, and I said, oh, by the way, the real reason I'm betting it is because that's what they would think. So maybe we feel that way about Kyler Murray. Here's the question that I have for you in the follow-up here. You're right about the Cardinals week 1 and the early season success. In fact, it goes back to Cliff Kingsbury's time at Texas Tech, Ian. 42-20 in week. I'm sure you've seen this stat floating around the Twitter sphere. 42-20 in weeks 1 through 7 since taking over as a head coach at Texas Tech. I think 2013-ish. I might be wrong on the first year of the trend. But It dates back a significant period of time, and then the fall off is there. The follow up I have: why? Like, what is the context behind that? Is it that his system is so new and unique that it starts fast and then there aren't adjustments made? Or is it just random variance that this coach has been so successful in the first half of the year and so unsuccessful in the second half?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I think for someone to have to know to be confident in their answer to that, they'd have to be in these meetings, in these film meetings, in these locker rooms.
Yeah.
Of course, we aren't, but I would guess usually, in my opinion, that's a sign of bad coaching. That's a guy who has a system at the start of the year, but then fails to adjust as other teams adjust to that. Because that's really what football is. It's they adjust to us, then we adjust to their adjustments, and they adjust to your adjustments to their adjustments, and it's this back and forth. And if you aren't good at that back and forth, you're going to fall off as the season goes on because teams are going to understand what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Last but not least, you want to talk about the Vikings, another NFC North team that I think could maybe battle with the Packers for the top of the division at this point. How do you feel about them heading into week one?
Yeah, I love the Vikings this year. I love them in week one. It makes me nervous, though, because it seems like everyone on Twitter loves the Vikings this year as well. But, I mean, you got Kevin O'Connell, the former Rams offensive coordinator. He's going to breathe some life into this offense. I mean, this is a talented offense. This is Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, Kirk Cousins, who I know he's fun to hate on, but statistically he's not that bad of a quarterback. Obviously, their biggest issue – he's not. And obviously their biggest issue is their defense, though. But I can't bet on the Packers until I see how the receiver situation is going to work out, because I don't know who Aaron Rodgers is going to have as his main target. I don't know if any of those guys are good enough to be a main target for Aaron Rodgers. So, yeah, he's back-to-back MVP, and I know his record without Devontae Adams is like 6-0 or something like that, but still, I need to see how that's going to work out before I bet on the Packers. So I'm high on the Vikings this year. I'm kind of low on the Packers, so I'm going to take the Vikings short underdogs in week one.
Yeah,
I think teaser spot good for the Vikings. Good teaser spot for the Vikings. Go through two key numbers, 3-7, divisional home underdog. That would be the way I would play that game. To me, I'm curious about the Vikings offensive line. And, Darisaw needs to take that step forward, and they could have gotten J.C. Treader, who retired. He wanted to go to Minnesota. They ended up with Garrett Bradbury, who's been a disaster so far in camp, from what I'm hearing. That's the one fly in the ointment for Cousins, if he just gets smacked in the mouth by this defensive line because the O-line can't protect. But, man, I want to get behind this Vikings team a lot. I'm with you on Vikings, Ian. I think they're going to be a plus team this year.
It's going to be exciting, guys. Week one is like 2 days away.
Do it,
Ian, yeah. I'm so excited. Okay.
Warren's so stoked to bet on the Lions every week.
Lions money line, baby. I'm betting that on instinct. Let's go. Ian, we so appreciate you coming on. Ian MacMillan, Ian Big Mac Bets. I love it. Thank you. Have a great week. We'll see you probably coming up this season.
Thanks a lot, you too.
That was Iain MacMillan. All right, before we get into our plays of the day, Gerard, let's talk about playoffs or laid off.
Playoffs.
Last week we did the NFC. We broke down 3 different teams that if the team doesn't make the playoffs, is the coach going to be laid off. This week we're doing the NFC, okay? Chargers. We're starting out with the hammer. Chargers to make the playoffs, or is Brandon Staley out? To make the playoffs, they're laying, it's minus 200 now. To miss the playoffs, it's plus 160. They're the trendy pick at this point to finish first in the AFC West this year. They obviously had a disappointing end of the season last year. Staley's now in his second season. The roster is stacked. They've gotten stronger. Can Brandon Staley put it all together? Because you have Herbert, you have tons of skilled position weapons, you have an upgraded defense. And I look at this, and for me, it's Brandon Staley is making those decisions in game that are like risk plays. I think the Chargers led going for it on 4th down out of any team in the NFL. They did it 34 times on 31.5% of their 4th downs. That cost them the game in week 18 in the 3rd quarter last year. And I know he leans heavily on analytics to determine whether or not to go for it in 4th down, but there's high expectations for this team, and that brings a lot of pressure for him. I think he's gone if they don't make the playoffs this year with the roster that they have this season, especially with how much better they have gotten in the offseason. There's a lot of pressure on Brandon Staley, and he's definitely in the hot seat, in my opinion.
I think so. It's the NFL is crazy. This time last year, we were ready to crown this guy coach of the year because he had all these weapons and he was this great defensive mind. And that was what the Chargers needed. They were so good with Herbert in year one and now year two, and they defense. And now we're ready to fire this guy.
I'm ready.
So
black and white. Yes or no? There's no gray area.
Lauren, remind me never to accept a job working for you. Clearly, there is a watch my back at all times. All right, I think so. I think things have to improve defense. I agree. They have to get better defensively, but that's a low bar because they were the worst rushing defense like in the history of the NFL last year. It was awful.
Yes.
They added Khalil Mack in the offseason. You have Khalil Mack. You have Joey Bosa. If that doesn't strike fear into the hearts of every quarterback in this league that has to face the Chargers, I don't know what does. If the Chargers defense, I'd be terrified not even playing, and I'm terrified. If the Chargers defense doesn't improve this year, there is absolutely it's okay to, think about him getting fired. Do I think he is going to get fired if the Chargers miss the playoffs? No. I think it depends on the context, though. If they miss the playoffs the way they did last year, he's not getting fired. If they go 6-11 and they give up 30 points per game, yes, he's probably going to get fired. Mm-hmm. But I think if the Chargers play to their win total at 10.5, it's juiced to the under. So let's say they win 10 games and they miss the playoffs because the AFC is so damn stacked and they play in the toughest division of football.
Exactly.
I think it would be unfair to fire him for that. We need context here, but I think the Chargers are going to be a very good team this season. I really do. That line,
I totally
agree. Weird. That week one line's weird. Why is that line only 3 against the Raiders?
Something's a little fishy.
It's a little fishy.
Yeah. That was the other point I was going to make. It's how they lose this season, which I think determines if he's fired or he stays with the team. And it is tough because the AFC is so stacked, like you mentioned. There could be multiple double-digit win teams that don't make the postseason. So it's going to be interesting to see how things play out moving forward. But let's move on to the Colts. Indianapolis obviously got rid of Carson Wentz because he was the detriment to their team last season. They got Matt Ryan from here in Atlanta. If they make the playoffs, does Frank Reich keep his job? If they're out, does he lose his job? Because they ended last season on a horrible note. Lost against the Jags, which remember I bet that game at plus 13.5. And everyone was like, you're so dumb.
Only the 10th time you've reminded me this summer.
Crushed. I know. But I should have taken the money line. Anyways, it's fine. I digress. I'm still not over it yet. Give it a few more weeks. Maybe I will be. But they lost the Jags last season. That put Frank Reich in the hot seat. All they had to do was beat a team with 2 wins on the season to make the postseason. I do think that this guy is a really good leader for the team. He knows what it takes to get the guys in the locker room to buy in. He's extremely intelligent when it comes to offensive play designing. Here's the thing for me is I feel like after the first 15 plays of the game, teams kind of figure him out. He doesn't get super creative with the play calling after that. The roster last year was too good to not make the playoffs. I know a lot of it was on Carson Wentz and his subpar quarterback play. Indy spent some money this offseason making the team a lot better. If I were Frank Reich, I'd also be worried about your job if you don't make the playoffs this season, especially with how last season finished in the way that it finished. And the Colts are also in a weak division with only the Titans being the real competition in the AFC South. And I feel like the Colts got better and the Titans didn't necessarily get as much better.
It got worse.
I think he has to win the division to remain the coach after this year.
I think the Titans got worse. They lost their 2 best weapons, A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. And Derrick Henry's a year older. Ryan Tannehill's a year older. That's why the Colts are the favorite to win the AFC South. If they don't make the playoffs this year, after last year's collapse, I think there is a massive groundswell of support for him to lose his job. By the way, I do feel dirty like talking about people getting fired and have it being this like thing, but that's what the NFL stands for, not for long, for a reason. And that is what these guys sign up for, is this just gauntlet of short term either success or failure, which leads to a very rash decision usually made on job security. I will say this about the Colts. They lost 2 starters from their offensive line last year. There may be a little bit of insecurity there compared to last season, where they had the best offensive line in football, hands down. Maybe not hands down, but maybe the top 4, top 5 unit. And you go from Carson Wentz, who has a little bit of mobility, to now Matt Ryan, who's a statue. That is the one concern that I see. If the running game isn't as productive as last year, by the way, they were one of only 2 teams in the NFL besides the Eagles to have a positive EPA per play on rushing plays last year. So if there is regression in that number and the Colts are not as successful running the ball, and Matt Ryan, who's the 6th quarterback in 6 seasons for the Colts, with Frank Reich, who is a bad starting coach, 0-3-1 against the number in week 1 in his 4 seasons with Indy, there are some booby traps, some landmines, I think, with this Colts team because the expectations are so high, but the output hasn't been there over the years. It's hard to expect something from a team when they haven't done it. It's one thing to expect something from the Chiefs that have won the Super Bowl, and et cetera, et cetera. When you expect it from the Colts, they missed the playoffs last year. They're redoing their quarterback situation. They've got some offensive line concerns. Jonathan Taylor's a year older. Is he going to be the most productive running back in the league for a 2nd consecutive year? There are questions to me. And yes, I think if they miss the playoffs, I think Frank Reich, after last year for sure, probably deserves to lose his job.
Yeah, it is really interesting to see what's going to happen with this Colts team, especially with Matt Ryan under center. 6 quarterbacks, like you said, over the last 6 years. It's just crazy. It's crazy. But the Colts have too many good top name talent players to not make the playoffs this year. He's gone if they're not in. One other team to talk about, the Ravens, to make the playoffs, or is John Harbaugh out. And I know both of us feel the same way about the Ravens. Obviously, last year was – well, you look at John Harbaugh, first of all. This is his 15th season with the team. He's only had 2 seasons under 500, which is crazy. I do not think his job is in jeopardy. Last season was one of those seasons that they finished under 500, and that was not on the coaching. That was on COVID. That was on injuries. I think he coached that team as well as he could have with the pieces that he had with everything that they were going through last year. This year, they need to make the playoffs. I think that they're going to. We talked last week about how we think that this team is going to go from worst to first in the league. They have so much talent. Lamar Jackson's just phenomenal. Do you think John Harbaugh, his job is at risk at all if they don't make the playoffs?
So the situation in Baltimore is unique just because of the system that they run, and I'm not talking about their scheme or their offense or defense. It's the way that it's run, the way the team is run from the top. And that's kind of where I would say, no, he's not at risk to lose his job, because Eric DeCosta over the years has been, with Ozzie Newsome too, have been very, protective of their own. And John's one of their own for sure. He's won a Super Bowl there. He's had so much success. I kind of think he names his time to leave. Like if you're watching Game of Thrones, he will name his heir. Like, that's kind of how I view the situation in Baltimore ending.
I've never seen Game of Thrones, fun fact.
Wow, we can get into that at a later time. Because
later time and date.
that would put me on tilt as a friend of yours. But I think the biggest question for the Ravens this year, you would expect positive regression with their injury luck. You can't get much worse. So let's live in a vacuum for a minute and say the injury bug does not bite them as hard. Well, they fixed their offensive line, you would think, in the offseason by drafting Tyler Linderbaum. You get Ronnie Stanley back at left tackle. He's graded out as one of the best in the previous few years at that position. Up front, maybe as good as any team in football, with Calais Campbell leading the way. They drafted the Penn State kid, Odafe Owe, who has been fantastic as well. Justin Houston still's got some legs left. The question at the defensive level is linebacker, which has always been a position of strength for the Ravens. Patrick Queen has been underachieving in his rookie campaign. And I think actually his first 2 seasons, has been very bad. And it's weird for the Ravens to miss at linebacker, considering that's a position that they've always drafted well.
Yeah.
The secondary is elite. Kyle Hamilton expects to be good. I think Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey might be one of the two best duos in the cornerback outside position in the league. And then Marcus Williams at safety is fantastic. There are a lot of things to like about this team, except who the hell is Lamar Jackson throwing to? If it ain't Rashad Bateman, I have no idea who it is. I hope that there is some answer there, but I'd be concerned if I was a Ravens fan if they fall behind in a game and Lamar Jackson's forced to throw. I don't know what that's going to look like game plan, game script wise. But yes, overall, the Ravens should be much better this year. They should make the playoffs. And if they don't, I don't know if Jim or John's going to lose his job, but it's definitely worth discussing.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see how things are going to play forward. And it all starts Thursday evening for the most dramatic season ever. I cannot even wait. Christmas morning, we'll be breaking down more of our NFL picks heading into tomorrow and Thursday, so stay tuned for that. Before we end the show, Jared, Pickswise.com, 3-star play of the day. Who do we got? And then we'll get into our best bets.
Exciting stuff on the Pickswise website today for two reasons. One, there are a plethora of picks happening today, including a La Liga pick. Actually, no, excuse me. Real Madrid is playing, but I think it might be Champions League. I don't know because they're playing Celtic. Yeah, it's a Champions League match. So Champions League match between Real Madrid and Celtic. That is on the site. James Milton wrote it up. Mark Lammy has Mets, Pirates, Braves, Athletics, run line picks for 2 Major League Baseball games. And shout out to Clev TA. You're like, who the hell is Clev TA? If you're in the gambling Twitter space, you might follow him if you're an NFL gambler. He, in my opinion, is one of the sharpest prop bettors. He's great at overall NFL, but he specializes in props. And we have signed him. I don't know if it's a lucrative deal, but let's just say it's a lucrative Pickswise contract. He is going to be joining us for the NFL season and giving out player props on a regular basis for the Thursday night and the Monday night games. And he has a 3-star prop on the site for Thursday night Bills-Rams. I have already bet it. It is locked in, and it is ready for your consumption over at Pickswise.com.
Locked and loaded. Head to Pickswise.com. 3-star play of the days. Don't miss out on a way to win money. Speaking of winning money, let's win some money by not scoring any runs. We have 2 nerfies for our play of the days. I'll go through mine first because it's a little more juicy
You go first.
than yours, and then I'll let you go with your little plus money that you got going on. So I like
money, honey.
Miami, Philly. I have plus money, honey. Miami, Philly, no run first inning, and I'm laying 54 cents for it.
Woo.
Before you're like, holy crap, 54 cents.
Holy crap.
The juice is worth the squeeze here. The juice is worth the squeeze. No runs in the first inning in Philly today. Jesus Luzardo on the mound. He's been really good in first innings all season long. He's held opponents scoreless in 5 of 7 on the road, 9 of his 11 starts overall. And then for Philly, you have a guy like Aaron Nola on the bump. Thrown scoreless first innings in 11 of his 13 starts this season at home and 22 of his 26 starts overall, including 2 against the Marlins this season. And you look offensively, the Miami Marlins are the worst team in the league in scoring in the first inning and just in scoring in general, but especially in the first inning. They've only scored in 12% of first innings on the road and only 15% of first innings overall. I know the Phillies are a little bit better at that. They've scored in 35% of home games in the first inning, just 28% overall. I feel pretty confident with Jesus Luzardo on the mound enough that he can hold them scoreless in the first inning. I know it's a little juicy, but bring me all that orange juice, baby. Pour a little champagne because we have a mimosa this morning for the Philly Nerfy. Let's go. All right. Give me your plus money, honey.
Do you realize that you just made an orange juice reference and you're betting on a team that is in the Sunshine State, which is known for their orange juice production? Look at that. And you're wearing orange today.
It all works. It all works.
We look like a bad Halloween costume. Right
Hair
now.
tie.
Black and orange. It's like we could be Party City with our black and orange get-ups today.
I know.
I used to love.
If I didn't know better, I would say we're Joe Burrow and the Bengals. Just saying.
Oh. Maybe that's a hint into where Lauren is leaning this week. All right, I digress. We are going back to Coors Field. We have not had a whole lot of success. So the Coors Field Nerfy has been successful this year. Personally, when I've double dutched my way in and out of this bet, I haven't had a ton of success. especially in my plays of the day, which we've referenced before. I gave out 2 picks today, Chicago, Seattle, Nerfy, and now Milwaukee, Colorado, Nerfy. Odds are the play of the day, based on what we've tracked in the past, is going to lose, and the other one will win. That's just how it's gone for me. But maybe we'll get lucky tonight.
That's just how it goes.
The Nerfy, let's hope, because for God's sakes, it is not fun staring at all that red on my play of the day ledger. The Nerfy is 29-40 at Coors Field this year. That is a 42% hit rate. That equates to plus 138 odds. Well, tonight we're getting plus 145 at Circa. So right there is just a little smidgen of value before we even get into the handicap of the pitchers. And again, for me, that plus 140 line is kind of the line of demarcation for where I feel comfortable betting a Nerfy at Coors. We are 5 cents higher than that today. Brandon Woodruff, 17-4 to the Nerfy this year. Fantastic. That's almost 80%. 35-9 on the road since 2019. He will face Chad Kuhl. Let's hope he's cool and crisp. 13-9 Nerfy record. Not that crisp this season, but 15-6 at home since 2019. Not bad. He's also had 2 consecutive Nerfies against the Braves and the Mets on the road, which I would say 2 of the best first-inning offenses in the league. Acuna, you got Alonso and Lindor and Olsen and Dansby. Tons of great talent at the top of those 2 lineups, and Chad Kuhl has been pretty cool through the last 2 games, sitting them down 1-2-3 in the first. Milwaukee is not a good scoring team this season in the first inning, 26% on the road. And they only have 1 home run. The home run at Coors Field always is what scares me.
Yeah.
They only have 1 home run in 103 career plate appearances against Chad Kuhl. Yelich's numbers are average. He's nursing an injured neck. He returned to the lineup yesterday. He's not 100%. And Colorado, we talked about it a few days ago. Their lineup's been trending down significantly. Their rate overall is decent, 30%. But yesterday, they scored in the first, snapping a 23-game scoreless drought in the first inning. They were on a free fall with their first inning scoring rate until yesterday when they got 3 runs off of Adrian Hauser. I'm betting on them not scoring 2 consecutive days after that absurd streak, and I think Woodruff can do the job. Hopefully Chad Kuhl gets it done in the top of the first. Rocks, Brews, Nerfy plus 145 at Coors Field later tonight.
Plus money, honey. Let's go. Chad Kuhl is going to be cool as a cucumber. And we're feeling cool heading into today. Let's get it going, baby. Let's go. All right. That's it for us. Words. Find us on the Pickswise YouTube channel. Go to Pickswise.com. I'm just so pumped up that week 1 is this week. Week 2 of college football
really
this week. We're
excited
going to
for
break
the NFL.
all week long. I've had a lot of coffee this morning. All right. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Let's get it. Let's bet it.